Good morning and welcome to Gunner Shot. Today I'm going to start a new series on technology, and this series is going to be Gunner Shot Technology. In this series, we're going to talk of pure technology and the trends which are happening there and how it's going to affect us. And side by side, I'm going to talk about some aspects of military technology. And I'm going to bring people who are deeply into technology with those military experts who already have some idea of technology and see where a fusion is needed, and then we'll see where it goes. And to tee off this series, I'm going to start doing this with my son. This is Vijay, my son. Like I said, he's done his PhD in software engineering and he's a senior engineer in Microsoft. Vijay, welcome to Gunner Shot.
Hey, Dad. Thanks for having me. It's fun to do this with you.
Oh yeah, it's going to be great fun. All right. So you've been in the tech world now for about 7, 8 years. In fact, a little more than that. And so a lot of things are changing in the tech world, including AI, which has been the big thing in 2023. But then equally other things are changing.
hmm
What do you think are the two, three big things which have happened in the past 1 year and which will change in the forthcoming year, that is 2024, as we're heading into it?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question, and I guess to answer this, I'll keep two things in mind. What were the big, high impact trends that happened in 2023, and how I think which one of them will actually have echoes into the future, especially at least going into 2024, and then maybe into the entire 2020s in general. AI obviously is the big one, and I guess we will talk about AI more uh, today. But aside from AI, I think the other interesting thing that we have seen is governments and courts and legal systems all over the world are catching up to regulating technology, and not just in one country or one continent. It's happening all over the world. So regulation is finally catching up with technology in a big way. Um, and then the other thing, and we will see evolutions of how technology regulation progresses well into 2024. This is going to be a hot thing to watch out for. And the other interesting thing that it is a late breaking trend that happened was around social media. We finally have a Twitter like competitor in the form of Threads, but Threads is not the big story here. The way social media is going to change in the coming year is going to really bring about a reset in the way we communicate or broadcast information to the internet as a whole. So that is also equally exciting, and we will hear more about this in 2024. Social media is going to get a reset.
Yeah. So social media is in the future. AI has just started and it's going to project itself in the future. And then, of course, the regulations which you spoke of.
Yeah.
So we'll start with something. Today, we'll just do AI because AI is capturing everyone's imagination, right? And so we need to understand it a little more, what
Yeah.
it can do, what it can't do, and where did it start from?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, just take it on.
So the interesting thing about AI is that AI just didn't happen out in a vacuum in 2023. AI has been a part of our lives now a, for well over a decade. Dare I say, even more than that. Some basic examples of how AI materializes in our world include things like your spam filters or spam filtering in your email. Uh, that is AI. When you open Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or X as it is now known called, uh, there are algorithms running there, AI based algorithms that are trying to figure out what is the next post or photograph or video that you should look at. These are called algorithmic feeds. When you open Netflix, Netflix is trying to give you recommendations on what is the next movie or TV show that you should be watching. These are all examples of good examples of AI systems that have been there with us for a while, that we use almost on a daily basis if you're using digital and online systems. So AI didn't happen in a vacuum. But the interesting thing about these systems, is it's important to understand a few characteristics of these systems to understand what changed in 2023 about AI. The first thing about these systems is that they were very, very local to the task at hand. So you couldn't, you know, create an algorithm for spam filtering and turn around and use it for social media algorithmic feeds. That's not how it would work. You couldn't create a social media algorithmic feed and then use it for recommending movies and TV shows on Netflix. So these AI models prior to 2023, when 2022, were really focused on a specific task. They were also very expensive to train. So you had to have the right data sets. You needed a sufficient amount of compute power. And so all your ducks needed to line up just right for you to get an AI model that would do a sufficient job. Even then, it was hit and miss, but it was okay. It was good enough that you could commercialize it. That's how you got products like Alexa and Siri and OK Google. And while all of them were real products that all of us were using, whether knowingly or unknowingly, like they were there, uh, they never caught the imagination of humanity. Like they didn't catch our imagination on fire. But in late 2022, this thing called ChatGPT landed on the internet that just caught everyone's imagination in a singular moment. And that wave basically kept crashing over and over again all through 2023. And there are a few reasons as to why that happened. So let me just go through some of them. So the first thing that was interesting about ChatGPT was this was a generative model. All the previous models were either predictive, like they would try to figure out what is the most likely show that you would be interested in, or they were classification models. They would take an email and say classify it as spam or not spam, important or not important. ChatGPT was different. ChatGPT was able to produce entire bodies of text. It was really, really good at understanding natural language. It was good at understanding human language. It was good at understanding intent. You could just chat with it like you were chatting with a friend on WhatsApp or something, and it really seemed to understand what you were trying to say. And it would give you a response that was coherent, that was, comprehensible, that was substantial. It wasn't just one line or two line responses. It would you could generate entire essays, newspaper articles. You could write code. You could get it to write code, using ChatGPT. So this is what caught everyone's imagination. And
So what you're saying is that earlier models were predictive or could classify,
mhm,
or almost on a yes or no basis, either zero or one kind of a system. And ChatGPT started generating intelligence. It was generative, and it could generate text. I won't say intelligence, it was still artificial. It could generate logic. It should generate output with certain amount of logic. Good, bad, or ugly, will come to that, right? So that's what happened. And how did it change things?
yeah, so the interesting thing there is, I don't think it is generating logic or intelligence. It is generating content. So it is
Okay.
like
So
ChatGPT.
that means it's
Uh-huh.
content. It's content. You're getting content out of it, right?
Yeah,
That's interesting. Okay.
yeah. So the interesting thing about ChatGPT is uh, that it can put together a string of words for you. It can put together a string of characters. It is really really good at understanding the nuances of human languages. It understands things like idioms, for instance. It There is an entire research paper, an entire body of research where where scientists are trying to figure out how funny can chat something like chat gpt be. Like, can it understand humor? Can it understand sorrow? So, and it does all of this by understanding how humans write text, how humans communicate with each other. uh, and so in that sense, it is, I wouldn't characterize it this way, but you can almost think of it as a very very sophisticated parrot. Like, a parrot will hear a few things and it'll try to mimic it. ChatGPT is obviously not just a mimicker. I think we are yet to understand how it works. We are still discovering new things about how it understands language every day and what that means for generative systems and AI systems. But what we have seen so far is it is really really good at predicting the next character, the next word, the next phrase. It is able to pull together entire sentences into paragraphs and entire paragraphs into essays that are logically consistent and make sense. It has its drawbacks and flaws, but uh, that is how I would characterize it.
So it's giving you a thought line. Whether it's correct or not is a different story. It could be a mimic thought line, like you said. It could be a parroted thought line, but it's a thought line.
Yes, it is a thought line. And an important thing that you will hear experts repeat again and again is that it is not trying to plagiarize text. It is not trying to plagiarize what came before it. It is truly trying to generate new content.
Okay.
uh, so yeah, and we can get into what that means, like in terms of its drawbacks or how you want to think about it, but I would characterize it like that.
Right. So if this be so, uh, first thing, what has changed between ChatGPT 4 and today people are talking of ChatGPT 6 and something else and else? Just give a idea about that.
Yeah, so with every, so ChatGPT, uh you know, three versions of GPT came before ChatGPT. ChatGPT was version 3.5, as I understand it. There was GPT 3, 2, and 1 before it. We today have GPT 4. There might be further iterations of these GPTs as OpenAI develops. Other companies are developing it. Other research labs are developing different varieties of these generative models, both for text and images, interestingly, and videos too. Recently, for a lot of interesting work has happened in the space of videos as well. But what is uh, coming back to chat, I mean, the models developed by OpenAI, with every version that we have seen, these models have been only getting bigger and bigger and more computationally intensive. Chances are that that trend will happen, that trend line will continue. Like GPT 4.5 or 5 will be bigger than what we have seen with GPT 4 or 3.5. But I think an interesting thing to watch out for in 2024, and it's already been happening in 23, is how open source models are, developed and created, so that you can't really run something like ChatGPT on your computer or on your phone locally. I think 2024 will be the year where there will be a lot of interesting work done around how you can generate, so how you can run these systems that can generate useful content locally on your devices without having to make a, request OpenAI to do it for you on their servers. Apple recently came out with an interesting paper where they're trying to do just that. So you can expect more of these kinds of advancements, where we have the tech, it's big and massive. It will probably continue to become bigger and more massive, but there will be an urgent push to making it smaller and making it fit on your laptop or your
or
phone.
a mobile or something like that.
Yes.
So that means, so there's a spin-off here. So you're looking at a software-ended business model and a hardware-ended business model.
Yes.
Because if my, little mobile has to run a AI program on it, it definitely needs greater amount of memory and RAM and all that
That's
without
right.
going into the cloud.
That's right.
And the cloud itself keeps getting bigger.
Yes.
So there's a clear business case in this whole story,
Yes.
right? That's for the big businesses.
Hmm.
Okay. I'll before I get in further into the big, I'll get back to the business cases of AI.
Hmm.
But just explain to me. You said a parrot, it just mimics a parrot and all that. Now I find that every big corporation has coming out with its own AI model, which has
Hmm.
followed OpenAI,
Hmm.
right? And they're offering it to you for use.
Hmm.
I suppose for the same question asked, all these will give different answers.
They might, sure. Yes. Or they could give very
Ha-
similar looking answers.
So they could give similar looking answers or they could give different answers.
Sure.
So that means so there's a danger of using AI. I mean, you have to be careful in what kind of AI you're going to use and which model you're going to use, and so you might get something far different from what you intended.
Right.
Run us through that.
Right. So at this point, I'm going to throw a big word out there. It's called hallucinate. Uh,
Okay.
right. So you know what hallucinations are.
Yeah.
Right. So hallucinations are when humans experience things, at least in their minds, that are not real. They're not actually happening, but people think that they're happening. So that's what we normally call as an hallucination. Um, AI systems. We've started using that word hallucination for AI systems. It's a cute little way of describing, I think, a fundamental problem in the sphere of AI, generative AI at least, where we say that a AI model can hallucinate, and what we mean by that is it basically makes up things that are not necessarily true to you and I as human beings who are living in the real world. And this is where it is really, really important to at least approach these AI models with the view that they are very sophisticated parrots. They are good at predicting what the next word in a sentence is going to be, but they really don't have a view, a worldview, a representation of what the world is and the relationships between the different realities and objects in the world. Uh, so I'll give you a super brief example. In fact, I'll give you two. I'll give you an example and I'll give you a thought exercise. The example is that not too long ago, a lawyer generated an entire legal brief and submitted it to a court. Upon inspection, the opposing counsel in that court case uh, started looking for all the citations for all the case law that this legal brief was citing, and they could not find it. They could not find that case law anywhere. Upon asking the lawyer where this case law, where they were citing this from, uh, the lawyer eventually revealed that they created that legal brief using something like ChatGPT. And turns out each and every citation was like ChatGPT fabricated it. And so the entire legal brief had to be redone. It was
Yeah,
messy.
sin.
So you have to be careful. ChatGPT will make stuff up for you. And you said something about different models producing different outputs. I think about it in terms of control. If you want to give control completely over to the model, I don't think we are there yet with the technology. You still need to take the output generated by these models, review it, and then use it. And invariably you will want to change what the model generated for you.
Right. So, what was the second thing which you wanted to tell
Right.
about?
So I also wanted to touch briefly upon this idea or emphasize this idea about real world representations. So these generative models are really good at understanding language. They understand the nuances uh, that makes human language and communication work, but they have no real sense of objects and concepts in the real world or relationships between them. As a thought exercise, think of a monument that you may or may not have visited, or may have, it's been a while since you visited it. So say, let's say the Taj Mahal in the city of Agra in India. You know, even if you present a photograph of the Taj Mahal to a child, right, who may not have visited the monument ever in their life, this child would have, you know, lived life. They have a lived experience, so they have seen buildings. They understand some basic concepts about how buildings are structured, how they're architected. They understand what beautiful looks like. They understand the concept of beauty. They have experiences, and based on all of those things, even though they have never visited the monument, if you put a picture of Taj Mahal in front of them, they will have an emotional reaction to that. Because here is a building that looks white. Not many buildings around us are like that. Here is a building that has an arc, a dome shaped roof. Not many buildings like that in the real world. And so it isn't surprising to us that even though a person, even a child who has never visited Agra and Taj Mahal, they will still be mesmerized by it. They'll still be wowed by it. These AI models are not capable of doing that. These AI models are not capable of understanding or extrapolating knowledge to, you know, reactions like that. In fact, I would go as far as to say that they are not really repositories of knowledge. They are really, really good, you know, engines for language. They understand language. They You can communicate with them fluently like you would any other person, but don't expect the best responses from them.
Right. If that be so, how, I mean, why is it so big? You say it, and it's going to go bigger. What
Right.
is the thing which it does when you say that's going to be the trend ahead?
It's become big because I think they've found commercial viability. So one of the reasons why people are excited about ChatGPT is because I think the core technology of generative AI and AI at large has come to a point of, you know, commercial viability. Like I said, there were many versions of GPT before ChatGPT. Like there was GPT 3, 2, 1. We didn't talk about them as much as we did with 3.5 and now 4. And the reason is that even though the results may not be great, they may not be perfect all the time, uh, but it does produce content that is economically and commercially viable. And by that, what I mean is, uh, you can use that content, iterate on it, massage it, mold it, reshape it to your purposes for your business needs and use cases. As long as you are almost collaborating with the model, you stand to gain a good productivity boost. You can almost, like, a good analogy a lot of people give in the tech world is, you want to think of these AI models that came out late 2022 and all through 2023. You want to think of them as, you know, your interns on your teams or in your company. The interns will do good jobs, but you always want to, you know, make sure that the work that they're doing, the output that they're producing is good. And if there are any issues, you fix them, but then ultimately use it for economic success and profitability. So that's why these models are interesting and exciting from a business standpoint. They promise, and they are delivering a good productivity boost.
So that means what AI does today, today's AI does for you is do the fundamental tasks, get you the basic information, collate that information, put it in some order based on which you can but you still need you to discern whether that information is correct or not. You check it out and
Yeah.
then use it.
Yeah.
So in
yeah.
any task, AI does the bottom end jobs. Am I right in saying so?
That is a good way of thinking about it, especially with where the state of the art is today. Yeah.
Right. So tell me, how is it going to be exciting in 2024 that it's not been so far?
I think all through 2023, the one thing about AI, these models, at least these generative models, have always been that they are running in some server that you don't have access to, that you have to pay a little bit to probably get your request in to produce some content. I think what's going to happen in 2024, I think the part that excites me the most is we will see more models that can run locally on your devices. I've already touched upon this
Yeah.
earlier, but what this will do, and a lot of this will come from open source. It will come from research labs at universities, and what this will do is the same thing that happened in the open source revolution for software engineering, where the code became accessible to nearly everyone, and everyone could iterate and put in their creative energies into it and produce interesting software as a result. We will see something similar happen with AI. And the first thing that needs to happen is these models need to be more manageable and you need to be able to run them locally. And I think that's going to happen in 2024, and we will see
Right.
terrific. I think we're going to see some very, very creative uses of AI going forward.
Going forward, fine. So what you're saying, what you summed up is it's not going to replace us; it's going to assist us in doing our job better. In one sentence,
I
right?
think that's a fair assessment. Yes, so far.
Okay. So if this be so, with your knowledge of military affairs, with whatever this thing, where do you think AI will fit in the military sphere?
That's an interesting question, and my knowledge of military affairs is as limited, or is mostly informed by being the son of a military officer in India. But I mean, again, we have talked about, like, the tech community has been thinking about AI and the applications of AI in any number of military or military adjacent hardware for a long time now. Nothing that happened in 2023, I think, necessarily changes any of those trajectories. Examples that I can think of: AI can be used in drones. It can be used in military aircrafts. It can be used in autonomous robots for doing rescue operations, and not just in military, right? Like you can use them in, say,
Anywhere else?
disaster recovery, disaster operations. Like, I'm talking about natural disasters. You can use artificial intelligence to for surveillance technology, like, and I don't think the trajectories of any of those use cases change all that much.
So actually, what you brought out an important point is that AI has a tremendous amount of dual use, whether
Yes.
it's for the military or for the civilian, like for disaster recovery and surveillance. I mean, you need surveillance for disaster.
Yes, you do.
Disaster, right? Whether the disaster is military in nature or normal, environmental in nature, if you're going to use disaster and there you need AI, it's dual use. So
Yeah,
that's
like,
a very, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interject you there, but really a good example of surveillance tech in civilian environments is how you can literally survey weather patterns and try to understand or predict if there is a storm that's going to hit your city in the next 24 hours, or how seismic data or readings that the data that we are already getting, how they can be analyzed better to you know f- uh, to predict an earthquake. Today we might be only able to predict 5 minutes in advance or 30 seconds in advance. I don't know, but it'd be nice if we can increase that window of forewarning even by
Much larger.
much larger. I am
Okay.
not entirely aware of how generative AI can be used in these spaces, but I mean, like I said, their creative applications of generative AI are still to be explored, and 2024 would be the year to watch out for it.
Right. I have the last question or the last thing which I want you to clarify. We all know that today, undisputedly, USA is the leader in AI, with China following, very on its heels. Where do you think India stands, and what do you think India needs to do to come to, I wouldn't say par also, to be somewhere there?
I would go back to the way software engineering evolved over decades, and eventually open source software brought uh, a lot of access to developing code, not just to a few countries, but everyone and everywhere in the world. I think a similar thing is going to happen with AI as well. You can't keep this technology locked up behind corporate servers for too long. Open source is the way forward. It was the way forward in uh, for software. I think it will be the way forward in AI as well. It was the way forward for encyclopedias, right? So for the longest time, you could only go to Britannica as as the authoritative source of encyclopedias, and then Wikipedia came along, and literally everything changed overnight. Whether you were in China, India, or the US, you had equal access to these repositories of knowledge. So similarly, I think you're going to have equal access to these tools, these highly sophisticated tools that will do interesting things for you that almost seem like magic. The important thing uh, that I always go back to is how we can educate students today who are going through school, colleges, and it is important to recognize that just as India has great curriculum and focus on things like mathematics, sciences, it will be useful to also start focusing on statistics, uh, because a lot of these foundations for AI are based in things like linear algebra, matrix manipulation, and statistics. So I think if you're asking what a country like India can do, or any country in the world, or any education system in the world wants to do, I would say just as you invest in mathematics, have and sciences, start investing in some education around statistics, because that will pave way for not only helping students develop and understand these systems, but also pave way for students and participants of future workforces to know how to deal with these systems as well. uh,
Fine. Got that point. So we are now at the tail end of the thing. What you have said is important. That it's not very great that today America leads or China is on its heels. It's a matter of time before the rest of the world catches up, or rather, otherwise there's no. That's the way evolution is going to take place in AI. And you also outlined as to what India needs to do. I think today's talk was quite good. We've got an understanding as to what AI can do and what AI can't do. In fact, the more important part is what AI can't do, right? And what AI, despite all the hype about AI, right? So today we've covered AI. I think in the next round, on the next session, we'll talk of the change in the social media which you've been talking of.
Yeah.
Right. With this, thanks a lot, and till next time, have a good day.
Thanks. This was fun.